tons of excuses. There's tons of people wanting to play, fucking detective over here or whatever. And really all of it amounts to the fact that they're just running cover for authoritarianism, which is really ironic because all of those people, or many of those people, claim to be.
I thought this guy, by how he looks, I thought he was going to take a crazy stance.
Small government conservatives, and they have no problem whatsoever with stormtroopers essentially coming in and completely violating people's civil liberties.
Okay, anybody want to play Arc Raiders with me? Let me know, okay?
Rapid expansion of the powers of the federal government where they act with complete impunity and no fear for any repercussions, and they fucking killed a woman and shot her in the fucking head. She was clearly driving away, attempting to drive away. This whole insane argument that she was directing her car towards an officer and about to kill him. I mean, I don't know where this is going to go. I'm interested to hear these two guys who I generally like try to argue the opposite of something that just seems pretty clear to anybody who isn't totally fucking running cover for the president.
Okay, we'll get to it, I'm sure. Lonerbox, what do you got?
I don't know, just looking at case law, it seems that in general, even up to this Supreme Court is not really all that generous towards cops who are standing in front of cars and behaving like assholes, but I don't know, we'll see. Totally unjustified. The defenses range from Trump's absolutely fucking deranged Truth Social post where he spoke about her like ramming into him and it's a miracle he's still alive, to I guess people trying to make it more nuanced, but yeah, I don't know how you can justify it.
Okay, I guess we'll find out. Jebtan, go ahead.
Yeah, I genuinely don't see where the case law argument is all the way up to this current Supreme Court. So yeah, my basic argument framework is vehicles are deadly weapons. A deadly weapon was pointed at least near, more than likely at, the officer. You do not have to wait for a deadly weapon to be actively firing at you or aimed right at your head to defend yourself, and so the officer was justified. Case law backs this up, and basically every case, and I have several cases to directly cite, but one sort of blanket note that at least two of them mention specifically is two of them specifically say there is no legal precedent to argue that an officer cannot defend himself in this way with a vehicle in front of him. And one of the core cases I'll be citing is 2C v. Billiot, wherein it's a very similar low-speed situation with a car attempting to flee without hitting an officer, but puts the officer in danger by virtue of driving toward him, even with the wheels jacked all the way to the right from a further distance, and they found him immune from... we found him qualified immune because it was a reasonable use of force, which is also what would be used to determine criminal charges. So I have more cases than that, but it seems to me basically every case law I've seen, even ones people have brought up to argue against me, has ended up kind of proving my point pretty explicitly. So I'm excited to see what he's going to cite.
Okay, we're going to get into it as we go. Counterpoints, please.
Yeah, I'm here to back up Jebtan. I want to eliminate all of the soy arguments, and I want the liberal and the lefties to arrive at the two...
The counterpoints is arguing in favor of the ICE? Wait, what? No way, right? This is going to turn into a 3v1. I know it.
Realistically, only defensible positions that you have in this argument. One of them is going to be officer-caused jeopardy, which means that a police officer acts in such a reckless way that they incite a violent incident, which, by the way, this is relatively novel case law. It's only been used in court in the past like 5 to 10 years, and it still hasn't, I think there's only one case in which it's actually resulted in, I think it was only civil penalties. I don't even think it was criminal penalties against a law enforcement officer. And then that's the only argument that you're going to have, is that by being an officer who was previously dragged in a previous incident, walking in front of the car the first time was officer-caused jeopardy, and then walking again around the car and then stepping in front of the vehicle again is officer-caused jeopardy. That's all you got. That's like the best argument that the libs and the progressives and the lefties have. Now, also, the only other thing that I think is worth considering was forwarded by my dear friend and parasocial lover, Pisco, which is effectively, would shooting that woman in the face end the threat? And the truth is that the cop would probably
not just a cop. He was a Marine.
Anyways, had he been 6 inches or a foot to the left. Now, that's the thing is, with that argument, though, I don't think that it's reasonable to think that an officer should be making that calculation in the exact moment. But I do think it's something that law enforcement officers across the United States need to be trained on. Because what they were trained on is deadly force, imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to yourself or others. Okay, you can use deadly force. That's the way they were trained in the academy. That's the way they're trained in FTO. That's the way they're trained in a billion scenarios that they do during monthly and quarterly trainings. The only way that you change that culture is by revamping the training, by saying there may be scenarios in which you are met with potentially deadly force that is legally justified, but it's inappropriate to do so because using deadly force will not actually resolve the situation to anybody's benefit. And by the way, that's an increase in training, not a criminal or civil indictment. So Yeah, I mean, I have like another 10,000 things, but I'll let it flow for now.
Yeah, we'll get into it as we go. Okay, and with that, we have open crosstalk, and if I tell you to shut up, it's because we can't hear you guys, and I might have questions as we go, but go ahead.
Let me give a disclaimer real quick for people who think that they agree with me to this point, however few there may be in your chat. If you're one of the people who's like, Renee Good was an agitator or a domestic terrorist, and so she deserved to die, fuck around, find out, nobody on this panel agrees with you, and it's fucking stupid. And if you're celebrating or digging up criminal records or trying to paint a picture wherein it was actually good that she died, just know that you're not going to be defended, so you should probably turn this off now.
Yeah,
Okay,
or her
S&P.
slam poetry from 5 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Or her parental status, or none of it is going to be brought up here because that's not the
I don't
argument.
know what
we're
you're
making.
talking about.
Well, what is the argument you're making exactly? Like, is it? Because listen, I'm just gonna say, like, straight up, guys. You know, I'm not a lawyer. You know, like, I'm not really capable of having like a citing specific case law or like going into this like I don't know, odd exercise of like trying to hold a trial for this ICE officer. You know, I'm concerned with the bigger implications of this, as I would imagine most people in the audience are. You know, like, what does this really mean for our country, and like, really, like, what were the political, social circumstances that led to this even happening in the first place? So I'm just curious, like, what is your purpose in arguing any of your points then, if you're not trying to defend the ICE officer, if you don't think that ultimately, you know, like her, I don't know, like appearance at this, you know, like little protest she was attempting to hold, like, if you're not against that, like, I'm not sure I really get the bigger picture here.
So to clarify, right, I am defending the ICE officer on the grounds that it was a justified shooting because of the deadly situation he was in. The reason being, I understand the arguments for precedent. Maybe we should, whether or not it's really legally justified, maybe we should can him just to make it clear that this can't happen. I would make in my opinion, even stronger argument to the contrary, that we're always going to be in times of political turmoil, and there's going to be a lot of individuals who are put in situations because of politics that are largely out of their control, and police officers, who any precedent on this case will extend to, are some of the most easily victimized in that group of political witch hunts, of cases where people expect them to pay for the crimes of a bunch of cops who got away. And so my thought is this: if it's legally justified, it's likely because we see moral justification in shooting at someone who is putting you at risk for your life when you're, you know, in the line of duty as a police officer. If we decide to set that aside for this guy, how many cops are we going to justify violence
Nobody
against?
picked that up.
Do we just say that any ICE officer, because if we think that ICE doesn't have jurisdiction and they shouldn't be able to do what they're doing, do we justify any violence against them? Are we allowed to put them in any sort of deadly situation and hope that they wait until we're actively squeezing a trigger to fire back? I don't like that precedent, and so I am defending this officer because I think this officer, to me, demonstrated on multiple different levels, and we can get into that later after Lonerbox gets his part out, demonstrated that he did not go there to kill Renee. He didn't even approach the car wanting to kill Renee. I think
Does
both
he
officers
need to be going there to kill Renee? Just for the record, okay? If he's doing that, if he's going there specifically to kill Renee Good, then that is first degree. That's first degree. If he's planning to actually kill on that day by hashing out a rough plan of how things are gonna go, that's first degree murder, okay? Which is why I don't agree with first degree murder. I think that it's spur of the moment, but with malice, which is second degree murder. Okay, I think it's second degree. Like, for the record, okay, the fucking thanks, Obama.
demonstrated that on a couple of levels. But he ended up in a deadly situation that, in part, he did put himself in a bad position for, but the ultimate choice as to whether or not his life was in jeopardy was the person hitting the gas, and then she hit the gas. And Starks v. Black is a court precedent about that sort of jeopardy, right? Officer-caused jeopardy, where the officer was found to, I think, got civil penalties. He was not immune because of officer-involved jeopardy. They specifically state in that case that the court and the plaintiff both agreed that if he stepped in front of the car before it started moving forward, all three officers would have been justified in shooting. It's because he jumped in front of the car as it was moving that he was not justified, and it was officer-involved jeopardy.
I mean,
because it took the agency from the
I'm
person
not trying
driving.
to I'm sorry for cutting you off.
That's
but, like,
fine, it was
listen,
long.
we're not in court. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't even read the case you're talking about. So
Sure.
for all I know, like, you're interpreting it totally incorrectly. I don't know. But even if I'm going to take your word for that, like, there's just two things I want to point out, and then I'll let this spread out a little bit, so it's not just me and you. But, like, so one thing that you're saying is we're always in times of political turmoil. Let's be clear about something. We are in an unprecedented time of political turmoil. And it's the direct result of the immigration policies of this administration, and particularly the rhetoric around immigration and the rhetoric around Somali immigrants in Minnesota specifically. Had it not been for this president and his rhetoric, which really the foundation of this is just he has a personal grudge against the mayor, the governor, Ilhan Omar, etc., Had it not been for that rhetoric, there probably wouldn't have been the level of opposition within that community to ICE, which is exactly what led to this
Jacob
entire...
Blake? Same state, same kind of situation where an officer who had a justified shooting, it became a social cue for, are you a safe person or a good person? You had to say that the officer who shot Jacob Blake was this evil person, that Jacob Blake didn't deserve to get shot in that situation legally.
Jacob Blake
is completely different political circumstances. There wasn't a bunch of, massive rampant anti-black. In fact, Trump was arguably doing more at the time to release and pardon black people than prior presidents had, So it's like we are always in
I don't know about that.
political enough times
to
where
but
cops end up
not always.
the target
It's not
of
always. This is in my view anyway. I think it's kind of difficult to argue the opposite, that this is becoming like there's an incredible degree of acceleration in terms of political turmoil and chaos in this country. The country is more divided than ever. I think there's extreme hostility from both sides, and this circumstance, it's the direct result.
So he's a both sizer.
Result of the Trump administration redirecting federal agents to Minneapolis because he has a grudge with political figures in that state. And, the other thing that occurred to me when you were talking there is like, it's kind of this slippery slope sort of assumption that you have that like, well, if we rule this case one way, then
Jacob Blake was paralyzed while trying to kidnap his girlfriend's children. Jesus.
Always going to be violent, increasingly more violent towards police officers. What about the fact that if you rule in the opposite direction, you let this guy go with no consequence, which is probably what's going to happen anyway, that there might actually be more hostility and anger towards specifically ICE, not just in this community, but all over the country. And there will be subsequent protests, riots, endangering the lives of not just ICE and ICE officers, but which, by the way, ICE officers have been the target of violence as a direct result of this administration's rhetoric. But you're going to see violence in communities that is widespread that could impact lots of different people. I don't really see the slippery slope argument in that.
It's not that
I'll
it
let
only
you respond, and I want to
way.
get the other people in, right? I want to get counterpoints about Lonerbox. I want to make sure.
So I'll go real quick. I agree that your slippery slope is possible and that mine is possible. And so my thing is, let's default to the law and the legal tradition because it's the only objective measure that we have set up to ensure that we don't allow slippery slopes to happen. Period. And we have a process for changing laws. We don't have a process for changing political opinion on police officers, and it hasn't been very succursual in the past 2 decades. So
okay, I want to hear from Lonerbox and counterpoints. Go ahead. What do you think, Loner?
Coming back to just like the fact of the shooting, when we made this argument, are we in agreement on like just a couple of simple things? Are we in agreement that when had the cop jumped out of the way and been unscathed, do we think this driver would have been seen as enough of a threat to the community to shoot her?
No.
Okay.
I don't think there's a threat to the community, in my opinion.
Okay.
I don't know about Connor.
You the same, Connor?
Yeah, I agree. She seems like a normie 37-year-old white woman.
Yeah, so we're not comparing this to like joyriders who get stopped and then they start...
37? That's so young. That's so young.
Going again, but they're driving very slowly and they're not in front of anyone, but the cops sometimes shoot them because to stop them from... Because that's sometimes ruled in cops' favor.
Because she's impeding traffic, but it's like super weak. It's
very
weak.
Not weak. Okay,
and there are definitely situations wherein I granted, but no, I don't. I'm not giving a fleeing argument here at all.
Okay, so the argument is just that she posed a threat to the officer's life.
Yeah, that he would be objectively reasonable in assessing that in that moment.
Even though, and I'm guessing, and this is obviously going to be like a split decision argument because obviously he seems to have fired his first shot after doing the whoa, as in like after you hear the bump that's supposedly him getting hit. I don't know if it's actually his phone bumping or on the microphone or something like that, but it seems that he's made the decision to fire the first shot after the car is effectively clear of him.
Well, not effectively clear. So I'm going to bring up case law here, but I want to give a disclaimer. When I'm bringing up case law, it's because I agree also with the moral core and the factual core of the case law.
Okay.
There's something that's been hammered out in, what was it, a Plumhoff versus Rickard in the Supreme Court. It establishes something called the perception reaction gap, meaning there is a gap between when an officer perceives a threat and when he reacts to it, and this will become relevant later. Also a gap between when he perceives a threat to be terminated and when he reacts to that information. I think that accommodates for a couple aspects of this.
And that's the 3 shots? Like 3 shots to make sure that like the threat is completely neutralized? What the fuck?
And one of them is, when the car is essentially in his gut, whether you think it touched him or if he was able to push off with his hand or not, he has already assessed the threat. He's already pulling the firearm. He just haven't had a chance to aim and shoot yet. And in my opinion, it showed good discipline in that core by the officer to wait until he had a proper shot lined up.
Good discipline.
It's not that he waited super long, that he had this long deliberation, but when he was actively sticking his hand out, he hesitated for a split second, but he fired well within that gap. That gap has been found to be as long as 5-6 seconds. this whole, all the way from her gassing it to the third shot happened in about 5 to 6 seconds. So it's like, this is an interaction where everything's happening super fast. He cannot see the wheels of the vehicle. And an argument I've heard, I'm not going to call out any names, that he could see the steering wheel is fucking silly. If he's aiming at someone's head with a gun, what is occluding the steering wheel if you're aiming at someone's head above the steering wheel? Your hand is occluding that steering wheel. He's not going to be able to see or process the information of her hand being in a certain position on a steering wheel if he's lining up a shot clean enough to do what he did in that moment. So I think we're doing what the court says not to do, which is assessing with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, as well as not accounting for the perception reaction gap, which are both case law that I agree with on a moral and factual level as well.
Okay, first of all, Plumhoff Ricard, that was after, in that situation, I don't think the driver, when they started moving again, was actually close to hitting a cop, were they? They started moving again because they were stopped after a 5-minute car chase, going at like 100 miles an hour.
I'm only citing them for the concept that became a part of every use of force assessment after the fact, which is the perception reaction gap. It's been cited afterward. Because it was in the Supreme Court, now all lower courts have to incorporate the perception reaction gap when they're looking at use of force situations, and they have pretty consistently. It's part of the argument of like why police say you want to mag dump versus not mag dumping, because if you stop shooting and then decide to start shooting again, it's going to be evaluated differently by the courts because there's a moment for you to have a second threat assessment in between those shots.
I guess the question
and that's
is,
been talked about as
you
well.
mentioned her, we're assuming, I guess, that he can't see her hands on the steering wheel, even though his phone captured it, and assuming
He was never in a dangerous position in the first place. Like, you can't even justify the first shot. Like, if you want to argue for like the stop reaction, threat eradication thing, that's fine. Okay, like you're saying, oh, within 5 seconds, right? There's no time in order to actually reassess the situation on whether or not it's threatening or not. Then fine, right? But at the same time, well, the first shot have to be justified in the first place, right? It's not about the following shots, like alone, right? It's about whether or not he was even right to start pulling the trigger. And I would probably argue no, right? Probably not. Wow, this is a pickle. Hey, how are you doing? Good day, huh? Nice weather? Nice night for a stroll? A walk? I mean, I guess we're both fucked now. So, what are you crawling around for? I can't hear you, in case you're speaking, okay? But you look really stupid. Yeah, that's right. I bet you didn't want to shoot in the first place. What, you thought I was Renee Good? Huh? Are you an ICE officer?
his gun in his hand are big enough to completely obscure that.
Well, his phone's not behind the firearm, right? His phone's here. His eyes are here behind the firearm.
Skin about the shooting.
Yeah, but again, we're still assuming that this is obscuring a whole ass human with their arms moving and the wheel. But I think that's a pretty
definitely
bold
part
assumption.
of it. It's not a sufficient part. It's not sufficient to kill it. Like, there's also the argument that he just didn't have the time to react to that. I mean, she whips that steering wheel, and also 2C versus Billiot acknowledges she could very easily just whip the steering wheel the other way, and then he's fucked. Which is why the argument that he could just step out of the way of the car is also silly. Because again, you're expecting him to determine 100% with 100% certainty that this woman will not turn the wheel straight or even to the left in that split second.
Well, that's why
Billiot recognizes that an officer does not have the obligation to do so.
But when you're that's why I'm curious that when you're listing all these stages with which he could make the decision, why didn't you mention the fact that she had reversed first? Doesn't the decision making start when she reverses?
So not necessarily, because if you look at the video, right, when she reverses first, it's kind of a neutral. It's not a neutral action because it definitely shows that she has intent to use that vehicle actively, which I don't think the officer was expecting as he walked in front of it. He doesn't pull his gun out until he notices that the vehicle is backed up and is angled at him. And he's also seeing a woman jump in and scream urgently. I don't know if he's hearing her yell, drive, baby, drive, because it's all in the heat of the moment. But it's not like she backed up in a way that seemed like she was neutralizing the threat. If anything, when she backed up and stopped with the car aimed closer to where he was presently and where he was before he moved in front of the car, that clearly raises the potential for a lethal interaction with her. And that's when he started to unholster his weapon. It was immediately before she hit the gas. Which, in my opinion, he should have had his gun out far sooner than he did.
Go ahead, Lonerbox.
Yeah,
I want
this is probably
in on this too.
I'll say this, and I imagine this is probably where the disagreement is just going to reach a complete brick wall. I don't know how you get past this, but the way I see it right now is that the best way you mentioned at the very beginning that a vehicle is a deadly weapon. Like, kind of, I mean, it's got the capacity to be one, just as like someone's fists do or anything else. A vehicle can be a deadly weapon. The best way to, given that this cop had no reasonable cause to believe that she would be a threat to the community with her vehicle, this cop, the best way to defend yourself against a car that's reversing is to move out of the way. That's the best way. And given that he saw her reversing, still had the time to keep his phone in his hand for whatever reason, and then his first choice is to get his gun out. Again, this is like a car that's just, like you said, it's been reversing, then it's stopped. The fact that he chose to get the gun out rather than step aside is that's very, very bizarre to me.
As he was pulling the gun out, he was continuing to walk across the car in the direction opposite to where she had turned it, right? So she backs up and turns the nose of the car toward the right as he is moving across it to the left. When he pulls his gun out, he's continuing to move toward the left. So he is actively trying to clear himself of the threat. But 2C versus Billiot makes very clear that
I mean, then he's not justified to use self-defense in the first place, because it looks like she's trying to clear the way. She's not trying to ram him.
Proximity, even at a low speed. The officer does not have to assume that this person is going to purposefully evade them with their car if they hit the gas. It specifically says, from a much farther distance, the officer, one, cannot determine the intent of the driver. So he can't just assume she is going to do everything she can to protect his safety. That is us asking the officer to completely surrender his safety to the whims of the driver. And two, that vehicles don't move in a straight line from where they are to where they are pointed, that they move in an arc. And especially at the proximity this officer was at, that's super material to whether or not his life is in danger. And you're asking him to assess her intent, trust her enough to say that she's definitely going to try to evade me, and not shoot. In 2C versus Billiot, the court concedes the guy was actively trying to flee, and he was trying to flee from a distance of about 25 feet, and he had his wheel turned to the right, and the lane he was going to was open. There was no argument for fleeing, and they still said it was a justified shoot for the officer to fire on him, because the officer doesn't have to trust that with the car facing him, that the driver is going to turn right just because it looks like he will.
Okay, again, he saw her reversing before she started moving. So he makes that decision to, and actually, you missed out something as well. He walks.
The car was going at like 0.5 miles per hour. We're not even talking about like 40 miles per hour. Ooh. The car was like backing up to move out the way. She wasn't even doing anything.
He walks not just to the side, but he walks towards the car. To the side when she's reversing, and you can see how slow he's walking as well. Like, it's not like this, even in a couple of seconds. Like, it's more than enough time to move out to the side. I don't know. He made a decision. He made a decision to either get out of the way or to just edge towards the car, still holding his phone, which I think is insanely irresponsible. And obviously, Fourth Amendment, like, you have to consider the fact, like, the totality of the situation, not just the moment itself.
Yeah.
But
guys, are we cooked? I think we're cooked. I think we're actually cooked.
Well, let him finish.
I think it's over for us.
Let Lonerbox finish, and then we can get counter in here.
The best way to not let a car be a threat is if it's moving, get out of the way. And he had time to get out of the way. I don't really
only if you assume it's his responsibility to trust her that she will turn right the whole time, which established case law says it is not his obligation. And again, factually and morally, I also agree that it's not his obligation, especially from that proximity.
So he's already at his right side of the car, or the edge of the car, facing the front. It's not his responsibility to just go one other step right. And then to assume that she'll probably won't turn left and try to ram him from like 5 feet away.
So he's not 5 feet away, one. So he can turn right.
I mean, when she reverse.
He can keep...
I bet a significant number of people unknowingly watch the sped up version. Yeah, with AI edits.
Just to the point. Because he's not 5 feet away, there is no possible way she could have.
But even if they saw the raw footage, they would have made the same argument. Don't even for a moment even believe remotely that editing the footage changes anything. They'll see reality and then they'll change it to fit their narrative.
After going through the right, if she spun it to the left afterward, she was already too far. There was no possible way. Physics doesn't work like that. They don't have
just not true, and it's also operating on 20/20 hindsight. One, it's not true, and two, it's operating on physically impossible. So if he starts moving out of the way, and we don't take for granted the 20/20 hindsight that she had the wheel jack to the right, She could very easily have kept that wheel straight or moved it to the left and killed him.
No, that was
What?
impossible at the
You're
Wait, if we
assuming.
don't
You're
take the
assuming.
20/20 hindsight,
Yes,
what?
you're only assuming
What
it's
is it?
based on the position of the car
based on
as he is
like,
taking the first shot,
physicals.
not as he is perceiving the threat, which
No,
is the
even
moment
as
she
he's
gasses
perceiving the threat,
forward.
there's again, he can see clearly
wrong.
the wheel being spun to the right. That's clear
No,
on the
that's
video. From his
after he's
perspective.
perceived the threat.
And
After he's
what,
perceived the threat.
What direction does a
Is
car go
this
when
guy
you turn the wheel?
okay? What is he talking about? Is he all right? Don't you think he should assess the situation, assess the threat? Isn't that the entire point of self-defense? Is that you assess that you have no other choice?
Wheel to the right.
Wick, when did he perceive
What
the
direction
threat?
does a car go when you turn the wheel to the right?
Again, I'm going to ask
What
you because
direction
you're
does I'm
determining
gonna
that
keep
this
asking this so you
happened.
answer the question.
I
What
don't
direction
care.
does the
I
car
don't
go when
care.
you turn the wheel to the
You
right?
said after
What
he perceived
direction
the
does the
threat.
car
Stop, he
go
doesn't
when
have
you
his
turn the
driver's license, okay? Chill.
Saw the
right.
wheel,
The
or
fact
sorry,
that you're not answering
before
this
he
question
perceived
kind
the
of gives a
threat.
lie to your whole argument.
No, it's because
The
you're
fact that you
embedding a
refuse to answer
lie.
this question gives a lie to your whole
Sure,
argument.
you can
Let's get
you
to
can
it.
keep rambling. So
No, but he's
anyway,
claiming you couldn't see the
Go
wheel
ahead.
for the gun, right?
you're
Like,
embedding a lie in your
You
question.
absolutely can see the wheel.
I'm gonna keep going. You're embedding
Yeah,
a
you're
lie
just
in
doing
your
his
question,
argument.
Connor,
which
Connor,
is
go
that
ahead.
that steering wheel was turning right at before or at the moment that he perceived the threat. The wheel was not turned right until he
When
had
the
already
car
started on.
is
I'm
turned
not
to the
gonna.
right,
Okay, I'm
when
not
the
gonna be
wheel's
interrupted.
turned to the right, what direction does it go?
He started. Pulling his gun out right as she hit the gas. She did not turn her wheel to the right until after he perceived the threat and decided to shoot.
He was
The
was
pulling
turning
of the
wheel
gun
right
and
well
firing
before
of the
that,
gun was
before
a
you
single
heard the engine
frame.
rev.
Even if,
In
hold on,
Beacon's-
can I?
Being game crashes out in unhinged debate aftermath. Okay, can you link that to me, please?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please go.
Simon,
I don't know we can get to it.
even
We'll
if
see.
you say, oh, well, when you turn your wheel to the right, it's turning to the right.
Yes.
Okay. Even if we say that, what you guys are ignoring that Jeb Tan has said repeatedly that you probably need to conceptualize is action, reaction, gap.
I
So
hope
listen-
that people realize that there are instances in which people truly have shot and killed people because they truly felt like they had no other choice. People have committed first-degree murder because they felt as though they had no other choice. Because they felt as though this person was threatening the lives of millions and millions of people or something because they're delusional, right? But that's the thing, right? Is that even though that's your... It isn't... It's about immediate threat, right?
to me real quick.
Sorry.
I have
That's not
already
this
said
guy's
this twice.
argument, but you know what I mean.
And so if you bring it up as a counter argument, I'm going to point out that I've already pointed it out. Officer caused jeopardy. This guy has been dragged from a car previously. He's walking up on a hostile situation. He steps in the car, in front of the car once. He has a cell phone out. He gets a video of her face, walks to the back of the vehicle, gets the license plate. At that
That's
point,
a
in
skill
my
issue, right? If he hasn't resolved this trauma, whose fault is it? It's only his fault, right? Like, shouldn't the burden of resolving these issues be up to him?
humble opinion, he can coordinate with local law enforcement where if he wants to take her in on federal charges, he can take her in on federal charges for impeding a ICE operation. If he wants to get her on local charges for obstructing a roadway or civil disobedience or some shit like that, he can write up a warrant and he can pass it off to the local municipality. So he has what he needs for a criminal warrant and to put her in jail. But most of the time, if you can put your hands on someone as a cop, you do it in the moment. Okay. So he goes around the car again and he hears his buddies call out. All of this elapses in less than 10 seconds. And the movement from the car moving forward to shots fired is probably less than 3 seconds. And from the first shot fired to the last shot fired is probably less than a second. So we're talking about a situation that's like less than a total of 10 seconds. So if you were to ask me tactically, Connor, you're in this exact same scenario, how do you do it? I approach from the passenger side. I say, we're giving you a lawful order. You're under detention. You are not allowed to take off. And if you take off, I'm getting a warrant for your arrest. Like I'm screaming that through the window because it's not worth killing me to get the arrest right there. But that's not what that officer chooses to do. That officer trying to back up his buddies goes around the front of the vehicle. She backs up and then she starts cutting her wheel to the right. And I've seen the camera footage. She's smiling. She thinks she's doing something cheeky. She thinks that interrupting a law enforcement operation and then fleeing, eluding law enforcement officers who have already
Wait, so
notified
what?
her that she's...
So she's trying to run. let her run away, then arrest her later. That does not mean you get to shoot her.
Being detained is a fun game on a Saturday afternoon. And so what ends up happening is she
Isn't
doesn't
that what
cut her
he
wheel.
said?
Well, she does cut her
Yes, in his scenario, yes, but that's not what actually went down, right?
wheel enough, let's be real. But she decides it's worth it to risk it, to take off in a motor vehicle and maybe hit a cop right in front of her car. Because let's be real, they were only off, even if she totally missed the guy, she missed the guy by inches. Less than a foot, she missed the guy. And in
And only because he did continue to try to get
you
out of
don't do that kind of shit unless you're willing to take on risk or danger. So then to reiterate what Jeb Chan has said, action reaction gap. So he's by the front tail light and he's already saying, this bitch is about to hit me with her fucking car. Holy shit. And he's pulling the gun and aiming as she's gunning the vehicle. By the time that he already realizes that the vehicle may have cleared him, the trigger's already pulled. His brain function's already gone. And you guys need to get action reaction gap into your mind as a concept, and you need to jam it into your fucking frontal lobe. So
I
if
understand
non-smoker says,
the argument.
real quick,
No,
just
I get
last
that.
point.
Okay,
If non-smoker says, oh, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a cop, I'm just worried about the general trends of immigration. We can talk about like mass deportation operations if you want. We're talking about cop shootings because what you're saying is you want to rewrite the entire book on when a law enforcement officer is allowed to use deadly force.
Can I respond to being called out?
Everyone can respond. I know Lonerbox wanted to say something.
Yeah, okay, so one thing as well, again, I'm guessing at a human level, I don't know the law on this, but when it comes to that 5-second or 3-second action-reaction gap, I'm sure this is very situational, right? Like if a car is coming at you at 100 miles an hour, that's like 200 meters away, 5 seconds before it reaches you. So I'm guessing you probably, in that situation, might have to narrow your, I don't think you can shoot at a car that's 200 meters away from you, coming towards you, even if it's only 5 seconds, right? So in this case, I think the significance of her reversing is quite big then, because again, his priority there, he's not necessarily to be a threat to the community. His priority there is to protect himself. How is firing a gun at her going to help him at that point? Like,
So yeah, this is a shitty piece of argument, and I didn't want to name anybody by name.
You can just address the argument if.
Yeah, I'll address the argument. But it's one that's been so annoying. So the standard is not guaranteed threat elimination. The standard is, can you reasonably believe it is reducing the threat? So let's go down kind of mathematically. Let's assume that an accelerating driver is 100% likely to be accelerating in your direction when the car is pointed in your direction. So if you shoot them, even if it only goes down by 1%, which obviously it goes down by far more, it's probably more like a 50-50 split, whether or not a dead person's foot will lead foot on the pedal or they'll slump off to the side and it will come off the pedal, it necessarily reduces the risk. Now, when it comes to the steering wheel, can you guarantee steering control, right? If the cop has to assume that the person can have the intention to steer the car toward them, and that is a necessary aspect of the threat assessment, can a dead person steer a wheel as easily as an alive person? No. So in that way, it also necessarily reduces the threat because it's not a guarantee that they're accelerating, which it is if they're alive and accelerating.
Halfway.
And it's a lot less likely that they'll be able to control the car in a way that can harm you.
It's almost certain
if you shoot them.
in any situation where the driver is shot that they will go lead foot just because of how people.
Oh yeah, that's
come on,
not true.
You've seen 100 people shot in the face driving cars. You know, 99 times out of 100, they all went.
Grand Theft Auto, if you do it, they do.
Look,
in GTA 5,
show me one where that's not the case.
But show me one.
Okay, hold on. If it's 50-50, this should be an easy thing for you to prove right now. Show me a case where someone is speeding and then it drives, right? Like is starting to accelerate and they drive and then they stop.
Sure, we'll do that when you show me a case law that looks just like this one.
I can show you a video where the other thing happened.
Wait, but which again? Maybe wait. Maybe hey, no, wait. Fuck.
Okay, I'm just saying.
No, Wick. Based off of your logic, why was it our rules of engagement to shoot drivers? Did we assume that every VBIED was going to go lead foot and blow us up anyways?
Yeah.
Hold on.
That's bullshit.
Like
you mean a total
range.
Like,
why does that matter if they're going to die and hit the gas?
You don't think the ranges matter when it comes to accelerations and things like that?
I'm sure it does, but at the same time, saying like, oh,
that's what we did.
not
We also
only
had multiple barricades,
does 90% of people who get shot driving a car lead foot, but also the cop should know that before the scenario is fucking insane. Like that's kind of wild. That's a crazy talking point.
But I want to give the. I'm trying not to debate, and I failed at that, but that's okay. We're gonna give it to what's his face.
You always fail at that, though.
To Lonerbox and they can respond.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I almost jumped in there, but because I also feel like even if it's not 99% of the time, there is always the risk someone could go lead foot. I don't know. That should maybe factor into your decision making if you're the cop. It does present. It is a moving vehicle where nobody's consciously operating it, flying at a particular speed. It does present a danger to the people in the immediate area. I don't know. Worthwhile argument. Just wanted to respond to what Connor said. To me, I mean, I almost feel like bad being here because I don't know if I'm the best opponent for these guys because I don't have a broad list of like examples of case law to cite and stuff. I'm not a lawyer, you know, like I'm a streamer, political commentator,
They
right?
aren't lawyers either.
And
That's okay.
yeah, they get moonlighted.
Lawyers, listen, if there's anything I know about YouTube lawyers is that they always give the worst takes possible, okay? They think to themselves, what is the worst possible take I can give today? And they make that take, and I'm like, fuck you.
I believe Jeb is a lawyer. He seems very informed.
Decided too. He got mad at me when he found out I wasn't.
So, well, good on you. So, listen, Connor had said, you know, if I want to talk about immigration policy, I actually don't. I want to talk about the rhetoric from this administration, which has caused a 1,300% increase in violent incidents towards ICE officers from 2024. There was a 1,300% increase in 2025 of violent incidents towards ICE officers and violent incidents involving ICE officers. And to me, there's a clear, direct correlation. It's as clear as day with the rhetoric from this administration.
What made you turn it off? Because it was just cringe, and it was just full of like fucking bad, like it was just full of stuff that's been debunked before, or they don't include the full context of things, and it's just like and then just fucking rinse and repeat for like the next like who knows how long. It's just boring that way. I can't do it.
Administration uses ICE and their highly visible tactics at whether it's directly at this administration's behest or not. I think it's kind of unquestionable. They use it as a marketing tactic for the legions of retards who support Trump. And I think that is a much bigger problem. I think that's the root of this problem, and that will be the root of every subsequent violent incident involving ICE until he's out of office. And this is a much, much bigger problem because I really disagree with Jeb on that point that, you know, while there's always periods of political turmoil. No, this is a period of a particularly like intense degree of political turmoil on this specific issue. And, you know, it's like one of the hallmark campaign things that Trump, included in his, campaigning, not to sound redundant, but you get the idea here. So I'm not interested in talking about even whether or not we should deport people or whatever. You know, I think there's a humane way to do that. I'm talking about the rhetoric from the president.
Sure.
Yeah.
But Jeb, may I, just because I want to isolate this argument real quick?
Yep.
So the reason why Jeb and I are so passionate about the details of the micro incident, pulling trigger, adrenaline, action, reaction, our vehicles, deadly weapons, all that kind of stuff, is because that doesn't just apply to this scenario. This applies to a shitload of law enforcement interactions. And I think the argumentation that you guys are making actually you might not be meaning to do it, but it's almost implied that you're allowed to engage in civil disobedience and violate non-violent laws without fear of detention.
It's
and
not
then if you're
fear
detained,
of detention, it's fear of death. Of death. Do you hear yourself? Are you retarded? It's fear of death, not of detention.
you're allowed to flee and elude. And if you endanger people while you're fleeing and eluding, cops should just sit back and take it.
Aren't you?
And so it's just like,
hold on. Isn't Renee Good justified on running away then? In that situation? Why wouldn't she be justified considering the outcome, right? Obviously, nobody can, see ahead and see exactly where the situation is going to unfold, right? But at the same time, if she knew that was going to be what the situation was going to look like, why wouldn't you flee? I would flee too. If I was in that situation, why wouldn't I flee? I would flee, right? If I knew that I was going to be shot, right? If this is a Groundhog Day scenario or some kind of other crazy, stupid fucking shit where no matter what path you take, you'll always end up getting shot, why shouldn't you chance it and try to run away, right? Not that she knew about that, but considering how trigger happy like they were, why wouldn't you try to run?
Totally, you might not be saying it, but the implications of your line of rhetoric basically mean that we should just throw low-level law enforcement out of the window.
Wait, am I misunderstanding? Are you opposed to civil disobedience?
I thought the Lonerbox was supposed to be Lonerbox's partner this time, but ultimately Wick became a better one since this guy doesn't even interrupt. Yeah, different time, right?
Real quick.
Well, wait, but you're gonna throw a bunch of points. Do you oppose civil disobedience?
No, I don't oppose civil disobedience. But if you engage in civil disobedience, then you should expect to get arrested, particularly if your actions are illegal. That's actually
Were you a
punishable
hall
for
monitor?
Are you
disobedience.
stupid?
Were you a hall monitor by any chance?
He was a
No,
cop.
but I was a cop, right?
Oh,
So
okay, that's
basically, no, I'm
Okay.
kidding. But
We've met previously. Hold on, I'm not done yet because I wanted to address what he said with the ICE thing. So with the ICE thing, with the
Now.
1,300% increase in violence towards ICE, I can agree with you descriptively that this is just caused by the visible, high tempo mass deportation operation that the current administration is engaged in. But then that's kind of the question is, if this is already the law of the land, and then if they're enforcing existing laws, do you have the right to engage in civil disobedience without arrest? Do you have the right to flee and elude from law enforcement officers? Do you have the right to endanger other people during the fleeing and eluding? And I think Jebtan and I are saying, no. If you want to engage in civil disobedience and you hate mass deportation operations, that's awesome. Go vote and engage in civil disobedience, but expect to get arrested. And also don't hurt or kill people while you're engaged in civil disobedience. It's actually relatively simple.
And let me touch on, I want to zoom back out. Because I can concede a point Non-Smoker made very easily. He's right. Trump's rhetoric, absolutely, before this situation and after this situation, is not only non-productive, it's outright evil, dishonest, and abusive. 100%. If I can concede that that did have a significant impact, let me lay out some other facts, which is, I don't think it would have nearly as inflamed an impact if there wasn't an entire media apparatus dedicated to attacking cops and saying they're all racist
What are
and
you
want to kill people.
talking about? There's an entire media apparatus dedicated to fucking arresting people because they're brown. What are you on about? Like, no matter if you're a citizen or not, they don't give a fuck. They'll try to arrest you anyway. What the fuck are you on about? Hello?
Every time a shooting happens that gets publicized ever, and I can evidence this by prior to Trump's ICE rhetoric, during, again, the Summer of Love, Jacob Blake, and a bunch of other totally justified shootings that people disregarded information on and just decided was evil racist cops. I think at least equally the anti-police, I'm not even going to attribute it to a political party, but the anti-police rhetoric that is so casual and so common now that I think this is 100% going to contribute to, is at least as much, if not more, at fault because we saw the same kind of things happening even prior to Trump's rhetoric. He definitely does make it worse, specifically for ICE members. But I don't want to pretend that if we deal with Trump's rhetoric, the problem is now solved, or even mostly solved, because this existed about 80% to the strength that it is right now in this circumstance.
Does he know?
Before Trump's ICE rhetoric even began.
He knows.
I think
it's very telling that you said you couldn't attribute it to a party though, right? Because we're talking about some like
well, I can.
like
I was trying to be
like,
fair.
Well, no, you're not trying to be that. Well, no, you're being honest. Maybe it's accidental, but the fact is that when it comes to cop killings and the way that some like ultra progressives or left wingers and media people might are more or less charitable towards them, comparing that to the intensification that comes from the Trump administration and the way that he talks about migrants or talking about how his political opponents are liable for execution for treason, and given the fact that like, it seems like quite a lot of the action on deploying people to Minnesota and the interest he's taken there, a lot of it was inspired by a fucking shitty documentary made by some retarded 20-something who was surprised that some daycares are open till 10 p.m. So it's not comparable when it comes to parties.
It's not. I'm not talking about the yuckiness of the specific rhetoric. I'm talking about its impact. And now I do have to go into the Dems hate cops argument because it's a strong one, but I was trying to avoid it because it's a longer one. Mainstream Democrats said that the cop who killed Jacob Blake should be tried for murder and convicted of murder. Mainstream Democrats said that Kyle Rittenhouse should be tried and convicted of murder. Mainstream Democrats over and over and over again have sided with the blatantly and obviously wrong side against cops and against the right to self-defense with a firearm over and over and over consistently. And I was willing to concede that Trump not only had an impact, but a significant impact on the violence against ICE and the violence against police at large.
The Trump admin is calling not just as, absolutely not. The Trump admin
against police? Are you kidding?
No, we're not talking about against police. We're talking about the environment in general.
Well,
yeah, obviously.
That's the claim I'm asking for you to concede for.
Okay,
again,
$50 just real quick.
ICE.
$50, and I will interrupt the panel for $50 donations. Okay, $50 donation from that Reshi guy to say, will Connor or Jeb acknowledge that she wasn't even participating in civil disobedience? She was just in her car. Officers came up aggressively, flaming tensions, causing a panic, and put themselves and everyone around them in danger. What did she do?
Yeah, absolutely not. I don't
disagree. I think her wife herself admitted.
Hold on, I want to tell this guy to take his $50 and stick it right back up his own ass.
Sorry, I'm being nice.
There's 3 lanes in this roadway. There's ICE conducting lawful law enforcement operations up the block. She is moving back and forth while honking at the federal agents and basically obstructing 2 lanes of roadway. She lets civilians pass, but when the law enforcement officers are coming up to her, she's talking shit to them. No, 100% she was engaged in civil disobedience, and it's almost like degrading to what she was trying to do to say that she wasn't engaged in civil disobedience. So take your $50 super chat, roll it up into a tiny fucking wad, and stick it up your ass, dummy.
I'd like to respond to Jeb if I could have the floor for a moment. So I just, I actually see your point. I do. I do happen to think that one thing that probably should be acknowledged anyway is the killing Jacob Blake. The killing you keep referencing, it was a few months after George Floyd. Yeah. And I'm not trying to excuse the rhetoric necessarily around that, but I guess what I'm suggesting is like Democrats trying to win brownie points with constituents who are already justifiably angry towards police. Maybe not in the way, it's not justifiable to say all cops.
How do you gain credibility?
At the time in the country, there was a justifiable anger towards the hostile, brutal tactics of some officers, which had been a historic problem, kind of manifested in one really publicized incident. But yeah, like just going back to Trump, and listen, anybody who knows me knows I'm not one of these like Trump is the root of everything kind of people. Trump is the culmination of lots of problems, right? But there is something to the idea of like, you don't pour gasoline on a fucking fire. And that's exactly what he's doing. I mean, I think part of his goal in his second term, I think, is gathering as much political clout as he can so he can wield it after he leaves office. And he can sort of have a say in who will be president or what happens within his party even after his tenure is over. And I think a lot of that depends on him appeasing, once again, the legions of brain-rotted retards who support him. And that could mean watching, the video of this woman being shot in the fucking head, and without even taking 2 seconds to analyze it, as you guys have clearly put all this time and effort into thinking out case law and all these different examples, the president just says, oh yeah, she was her wife was clearly a professional agitator, and he was just doing his job, and it's things like that it hypes up his base, but it also ignites like a degree of like furious anger towards not just Trump but ICE, right? It's compounding
I agree.
this problem.
And I so badly, and like this is what I've wanted on both sides for a long time in a lot of these situations. I want so badly to have that conversation in its entirety. I want so badly to have a comprehensive conversation about a month-long break in ICE enforcement so they can get better training, or getting body cams, even though I think they are already trying to deploy body cams, they just haven't yet, because they're rolling them out. I want so badly to have those conversations. But it is impossible to have that conversation when a whole side of the conversation about this issue is being convinced that not only was this an unjustified shooting, but that ICE is out there looking for excuses to kill not only illegal immigrants, but also civilians. And that they are the Gestapo, and that they are going door to door just itching,
That's
looking
literally
for
what they're doing, you fucking moron. You absolute fucking fanny. You actual fucking retard. That's literally what they're doing. Like, what the fuck are you on about? Like, you are actually crazy. You're losing it. You're losing your fucking marbles.
Send you away or kill you. And it's like, we can't have the real conversations about... If everybody was able to unify on this subject, this was a justified shooting, but Trump and Kristi Noem's statements were at least in part unacceptable, then we could get a lot more pressure on them. But Trump gets to hide behind the fact that the other half of the situation is equally delusional about this being cut and dry murder. No,
even if we're coming back to your...
Can I just ask a temperature check question here? Do you think it is entirely super clear from the jump that this was entirely justified and no one should have looked into it or questioned it?
Of course not. Neither side thinks that.
Excellent. But the problem is, when many of us are looking into it and questioning it, we may not be lawyers, we may not know the legality involved, but I can tell you 100% certainty now that I've looked at it that it was an unnecessary shooting. Whether it was
you said it was cut and dry murder.
It was absolutely unnecessary.
Hold on. You said it was cut and dry
murder. It was cut and dry murder, yes.
Had he not shot, no one would have died. Can we acknowledge that?
You said it was cut and dry murder. You are part of the problem. Stop trying to back away. I said it is equally delusional to say that it was cut and dry murder. You said it was cut and dry murder, and now you're backpedaling off that position because your position was equally delusional to Trump's that it was cut and dry murder.
No one would have died.
You can talk through it because it's a good point, but I'm not going to let you jump off it.
You can't answer my question.
You said it was cut and dry murder.
Argument.
Did you say it was cut and dry murder?
Hold on. No.
What was my argument that it kills? What was my argument?
I said,
what was my argument?
Can we acknowledge that if she had not shot,
I'm not going to answer.
If she had not shot, no one would have died. You can't answer my question. Are you refusing?
What was my argument?
Wait. You think cut and dry? Just to be clear, you think cut and dry murder is as delusional as what Trump said?
Yeah.
Trump saying the obviously professional agitator, very disorderly, violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer. recovering in hospital.
Yeah.
It's amazing you're still
So
alive.
both of-
No, these are not
yeah,
equally.
both of
You did
those-
this. I'll call it what we did earlier with law enforcement
I can
as well.
explain why.
But when it comes to your earlier question about law enforcement and comparing Dems and Republicans, even then, you can talk about the way that Dems treat ICE, but comparing that to like Trump, like, okay, generally Trump loves law enforcement until they're not on his side, right? The way he talks about
comparing it to the
DOJ, the way that he spoke. Not even the outcomes. My American politics is listen. My American politics is rusty. Okay, I don't recall Democrats ever pardoning any BLM rioters who attack cops. Trump pardoned 1,600 J6 protesters, many of whom fought with cops.
That has nothing to do with the ICE violence.
Attitudes towards
Because
law
if that
enforcement,
had
the
to
fact
do
that
with the
Republicans
ICE
will fight
violence,
with cops as soon as they don't support
The ICE
them.
violence would have started in 2020, not 2024, if that were the case.
So now it's just ICE, not law enforcement, just ICE.
No, he cited ICE. I'm responding to his argument.
Well,
when I
earlier
say
you were
that.
saying
Like,
law
you're
enforcement,
acting
but if you
like
want to narrow
I'm
it down
the
to
one
ICE, that's okay.
Yes, because I am making a greater argument about law enforcement. But when I'm responding to him, when we're talking about Trump's rhetoric, he directly cited the 1,300% increase in violence against ICE. So yes, that's why I'm going to bring up ICE when it comes to Trump's rhetoric, because that's the outcome he was wanting me to compare. So I was comparing that outcome to the fact that 80% of this fucking vitriol existed prior to Trump's
Okay, just
ICE
to
rhetoric.
clarify, so it's both sides bad for ICE, but not for law enforcement in general.
It's both sides bad for both, but obviously Trump's impact is a lot more severe on ICE, and it gives a better argument for the Democrats. So I was being charitable, but every time I've been charitable, you've tried to fucking shit on me for it. So I guess I won't be charitable. Yes, Democrats, the argument is even better for Democrats when you're talking only about ICE. But if we take it to law enforcement in general, Democrats hold way higher a share of the blame for the anti-cop rhetoric. 100% they hold more of the blame.
Okay.
But who made the
$60
environment in the first place, right? It's obviously Trump that made the environment in the first place that enabled this much violence to happen, right? Like, we're not just talking about... This is not like a cause and effect thing, okay? It's a complicated thing with Trump at the very top, okay? Like, just to be very clear. Jesus. Why would you do that? Yeah, because Trump refuses to de-escalate the rhetoric, which is why people keep on getting killed, right? It's more complicated than that.
Just real quick, $50 from Zonia for a question for Jeb and Connor. Thoughts on the idea that the ICE officers are the professionals and should be understanding that civvies are going to panic and poorly handle these situations, and so the
thanks for
officers
being in the corner,
should have
buddy.
worked to de-escalate the situation.
Can I have?
Trump 28!
Being specific on
Wait,
cops,
did you just
but then
put
he went
that
back
helmet
to
on now?
ICE to-
I'll probably
yeah,
be
specific to
pretty
ICE,
soy
but then he
about
went
it,
back to
too.
cops
I've been
at the
pretty
end.
soy this whole time, and I'm getting attacked by Lonerbox for it.
Well, I'm gonna be. Well, Lonerbox is welcome to attack me. Jesus, it's been a while.
I'm attacking the argument, to
Well,
be fair.
Jeb, most people
No, I
are
know,
supposed
but
to
you're
hate law
attacking my most
enforcement and
charitable
ICE
arguments and not
to
the
be
meaner
similar
ones.
things.
Oh, you're saying it's charitable, but then even then you said you were being specific. Even then you said you were being specific to ICE, but then at the end of your last statement you went back to cops again. So I don't know what you're.
And I explained
I
why.
want you-
I explained why. It's not a mystery.
I want to answer the $50 super.
Counter points, answer.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
yeah.
All right. Yes,
Fuck.
100%. A term that everybody at this argument, soy lib, soy lefty, soy progressive, chud righty, chud libertarian, chud conservatarian, you should all Google officer caused jeopardy. It's a relatively novel legal idea that officers can legally justify use of force by escalating scenarios unnecessarily. As a matter of fact, what I have said twice now is considering that the officer was already previously dragged
Connor,
by
that's
another
gay.
vehicle, resulting in 12 stitches, I find it fucking insane that he was willing to step in front of a vehicle, not once, but twice, particularly when he knew that the driver was going to be detained. That's fucking crazy. And yes, law enforcement officers should be trained to a higher standard.
Yep. I agree. I don't think it's a great argument for this one.
Doesn't mean she's allowed to write him over, though.
Yeah, that's my thing. Specifically because of the distinction made in Stark C. Black and 2C versus Billiot, I don't agree it's as applicable to this situation. But I agree. ICE and police have a higher standard. So that's why I say there's no fleeing argument, right? If they try to de-escalate and she drove off and put no one's life in danger, you know, I don't think they would have had the right to pop shots at her because the totality of the circumstances doesn't point toward somebody who is trying to harm anyone. Once her car is pointing at an officer and there's an officer right here and she decides to put her foot on the gas at all, she has now fundamentally changed that calculation and made it clear that she is at least willing to have an officer's life be in danger in order to flee. And that is all the officer should need and needs legally to fire a shot. Because all it takes, it doesn't take her being a bloodthirsty murderer, and I don't think she is. All it takes is for the officer to assume she is willing to seriously harm him in order to flee for him to shoot.
Yeah,
you want me to
I mean, I don't
respond to that,
know.
or-
Well, I don't know if I should, because again, it's like, it's sort of weird. I don't know if this is just me. Someone else maybe can add to this. It kind of feels like this is what I'm hearing from you guys collectively, mostly from Jeb, which is essentially you don't support the fact that the woman was shot. You think that Trump's rhetoric is partially responsible for the outcome in the situation. You think that ICE officers do not have the proper level of training or preparation. You're even willing to consider the fact that he made a really bad judgment call. I mean, Connor is essentially saying that having been dragged by a car previously to then even go into this situation. So all of those things are true, but what you're saying is, essentially in that one moment, he had a reasonable, he had reason to assume that she might possibly hit him with his car, hit him with her car, and in a split second, he made the wrong decision and killed her, and therefore it's not a murder. And
Legally,
I don't.
be the right decision.
Yeah, I don't think he made the wrong
Okay.
decision in shooting. To be clear, I think
Hold on, you don't think
he
he
You
made
don't.
the wrong decision, even with hindsight?
no.
Huh.
No,
Because-
matter of fact, I want to flip this real quick. I want to ask you guys.
Because in
a situation.
hindsight, I still know
Hold on,
he
hold on,
didn't
Jeff.
have
Let me ask him a
hindsight.
question. Let me ask him a question. So you're a citizen engaged in civil disobedience. You are notified by law enforcement officers that you are now detained. Get out of the car. Okay. They have lights and sirens. They have a armor vest with a tape on top of it that says police. Okay. Do you, as a citizen, have a duty to keep your vehicle stationary and surrender to law enforcement? Yes or no?
Yes, of course. My argument's never been that she's not retarded. She's absolutely retarded in what
I believe
she
he's
did.
asking
She didn't
me.
deserve-
I mean,
I was asking.
dude, because the argument is whether or not like the cop was like had depravity in their heart, right? Depravity of heart is like a legitimate legal term. I'm not kidding. Okay, it's like it's that you could have let her got away without anybody dying. You could have arrested her later, or did you truly believe that your life was in danger, or did you believe that your life could be in danger, but more than half of it was like you like genuinely just kind of being evil? Like it's just I don't know, dude. It's just so stupid.
The lefties, but
All right, my
I mean,
bad.
I'm
Go
happy to
ahead.
hear
Sure.
that.
I mean, by the letter of the law, and I think just to reduce the probability that shit goes sideways, yeah, you should get out of your car.
But if you create the environment
yeah, okay.
for it, it's like
Okay,
Where you going
now
with
there's
that?
a cop. There's a cop standing in front of your car, and you're turning all the way to the right because you want to escape. But it's going to be close. Okay, it's going to be close. All right, like you want to escape. You decided I don't want to go to jail tonight. I want to go to jail tomorrow. You know, I got like a ballet recital at 6 p.m. with like doggy ballet with my black Labrador. I don't want to go to jail tonight. I'll go to jail
Okay.
tomorrow. So I'm gonna get out of here. So I cut my wheel to the right, and I'm gonna gun the accelerator. But it's looking kind of close. Do you think that I should A, gun the accelerator, or B, say, this is a bad idea, let's stop?
I think what's interesting is I feel like you
Connor, and what did we say? Connor? Retard? What did we say? Remember, what did they say? They did not disagree with the fact that the woman made a bad decision. We all agreed. We all agreed that the woman made a bad decision. But nobody disagrees on that. I don't know why you are being so retarded on this. People on this panel has clarified it 50 times at this point. God, you're so stupid.
guys are granting to the officer,
No, we're not.
you don't even know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, you're probably saying that we're giving him too much latitude.
Oh
No,
my
you got to just let me
God.
finish like a statement, dude. You're like
So
up here,
cringe.
like you're granting to the officer
Let's
that
be honest.
I guess in a moment he may, huh?
I said, I listened to y'all for like 30 minutes, but go off.
Well, I'm trying to just respond to your one fucking point. Is that right? Okay.
The floor is yours.
So, Jesus Christ, dude.
Just go,
Put
just
your
go.
fucking helmet on.
Just
So,
drive forward,
look.
point the wheels, head his directions, and go. Gun it. Go.
Okay, look.
Turn your proverbial
You're-
wheels. Drive now.
You're willing to, okay, Jesus Christ, dude. You're willing to acknowledge to some extent that he made a judgment call in walking over to the car, which in your words is insane, right? Because he had been dragged by a car previously, and I guess in that moment he made a decision which you're calling crazy, but we're left to assume that he did that, I guess presumably because he felt like that was the best way to diffuse the situation or something like that. I don't know if you're exactly making that argument, but that's kind of how I'm interpreting it. I'm I don't know. I guess it's kind of weird because when we're describing the sequence of actions she took, it seems like you're describing it like it's this perfectly logical thing. When I think the reality of the situation is, probably from both their vantage points, that all of this happened really, really quickly, and it's totally possible that someone made, the driver, Renee Good, made like a panicked decision to pull her car away when she absolutely shouldn't have. And I don't think it's really quite as like coherent as you're describing.
We all know what the fuck Connor's been consuming, I guess.
Of, oh, I think that I should pull away for this and that reason, and this is the lot. I think it was more just like, hey, this looks like a bad situation. I better get the fuck out of here. And to that extent, I'm actually willing to agree with a lot of people who say she probably shouldn't have put herself in the middle of that situation to begin with.
No.
However, I also think that the officer's role in that situation, in my view, should really be de-escalating. If somebody's coming in and they're, not really being rational, their job is to try and lower the temperature. And it didn't seem like they were doing that. It looked to me, anyway, on the video, like they're surrounding her, and it's becoming more hostile of an encounter, which causes her to then sort of defiantly smile and act like, which a lot of people do when they're nervous, by the way. They're panicking, they don't know what to do. I don't really think she was doing it as like a insult to the cops. I think a lot of people do that stuff when they don't know how to react, and then pull their car away, like, stupidly because she was panicked. And yes. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you agree with that assessment or not.
But 100% of what you said. But this is why I'm on the WIC TV panel show, the premier entertainment platform for political commentary that should have easily surpassed Lex Friedman and all those other fake ass fucking podcasters. He should be at 1 million subs right now. And I came onto the premier.
Blaze me harder, daddy. Okay.
Keep going. Commentary panel show in order to remind liberals, because this is actually my frustration, okay? Remind liberals and progressives that there can be something morally unjust happening in the country that is legal. We can look back at civil rights, we can look at the slavery, we can look at all that.
The rise of Hitler.
And that civil disobedience can be the right thing to do, which we have a lot of heroes in American history who have engaged in civil disobedience. But you should expect to get incarcerated if you're engaged in illegal civil disobedience. And so you're right. In my opinion, Renee Good probably panicked because she was like, oh shit, I signed up in order to fuck with the Gestapo because I think the mass deportation operations are bad. And this is not a conscious thought. This is pure adrenaline. This is raw emotion. It's not a conscious narrative. But then she's like, oh shit, 3 dudes in body armor are about to come fucking arrest me. I need to get the fuck out of here. And then she guns it. Whereas I would hope that because WIC TV will soon be a multi-million subscriber YouTube show with millions of views, now the liberals who want to engage in civil disobedience will be like, damn, I heard that Connor guy talk the other day. I was ready to engage in civil disobedience, but I'm going to mentally prepare for the fact that I might actually get detained and arrested, and I might actually have an adrenaline dump, and I might do stupid shit.
Well, let WIC TV, the future multi-millionaire streamer or whatever, make $50 more from Zonia. Thank you. To ask Lonerbox and non-smoker question. Is there any responsibility upon the protesters for going out of their way to antagonize and confront and even obstruct a bunch of hot-headed goons with guns, especially in the heat of an anti-ICE protest? Should we see them as victims?
You can still be a victim and still be making a bad decision. I don't know why people don't get that. Whatever her... Like the whole ethos of civil disobedience, at least when it's successful in the United States, like Martin Luther King, is you engage in civil disobedience and you expect to get arrested. Like getting arrested is part of the civil disobedience. That's what your way of saying that we're going to protest disobediently something about the society, but we're also doing so as part of the society. And you demonstrate that by getting arrested. That's why they call themselves jailed quite a lot. Whatever this woman's opinion was on ICE that might have been exaggerated by what she'd heard on social media or from even Dems, one true opinion she would have had about ICE is that they're going into these areas with pretext from Trump, basically calling anyone who fucks with them or any of their political opposition as terrorists. So that's kind of an issue as well. That might have explained why she was afraid and why she made that jerk reaction to flee. Again, I don't think it's a good decision. But as far as the behavior of the cops beforehand as well, and like the lack of de-escalation, get out of the fucking car and standing in front, and the guy playing around with his phone, like this will all be considered if it ever goes to a court case, as will the severity of the initial crime that she was supposedly committing. So but as far as case law goes, like I wanted to bring back a few examples that you brought up earlier. Like you mentioned, what was it, Tusi versus Billiard. But again, I don't know if you mentioned this, but again, the issue with this person and the big difference was that, like a lot of these cases, this was a joyrider, right? They were a threat to the public. I don't know if Connor might have mentioned Barnes v. Felix. That
wasn't the reason why they found him reasonable, though. That wasn't part of why they found him reasonable. They found him reasonable strictly from the threat to himself part of the evaluation as well.
Okay. And in Barnes v. Felix, was it Connor who brought that up, or was that you?
Probably me.
He was citing specific case law. The only thing that I brought up is officer caused jeopardy.
Yeah, because this was one, like, because Barnes v. Felix was outside of joyriding, because this was a case where, and again, the chronology on this is kind of odd if you're familiar with it, but like the guy gets pulled over for toll violations, and the officer talks to him for like 2 minutes, trying to get his identification, tells him to get out of the car. The guy opens the door, but then turns the ignition on, and now the case says that the cop afterwards jumped onto the door sill of the car, and then the driver started moving.
Even.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing about the chronology, because they say this all happened within 2 seconds. And in the initial thing from the initial courthouse, they said that they could only consider the 2 seconds when the car starts driving and when the cop fires, not him deciding to jump on the door sill. Because the obvious question is, like, the car starts moving, how long do you have to jump on the door sill before it's gone, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of happened. The decision is more or less being made at the same time that he probably turns the ignition on rather than the car starts moving. But obviously, because the cop has put himself in that position, he starts firing and he does not get qualified immunity, or it's seen as a Fourth Amendment violation.
Well, no. So what happened was the Supreme Court didn't rule finally on the immunity. They ruled Fifth Circuit, and this is like a procedural thing that we should bring up. The Fifth Circuit was the only appellate court, of my knowledge, that was using that moment of threat doctrine you referred to, where they only look at the 2 seconds. The Supreme Court only ruled on whether or not that was the right way to look at it. They said, definitely not. You need to use what the rest of the circuits are doing, which is totality of the circumstances. So all the other case law I'm referencing was under totality. Then they threw it back to the Fifth Circuit to look at it under the totality of circumstances, and they did rule in the officer's favor, which I actually think there is a better case for ruling against that officer than there is this ICE officer, because he did jump on the car after it was moving, but they, as you said, referenced that perception to reaction gap and argued that he didn't jump on it while it was moving. He decided to jump on it before it was moving, and then it moved, and then he jumped, and so that just happened to be the case. I also struggle with you on the length of the perception reaction gap, because as I've heard the chronology of those events, that doesn't seem to be the case to me. But even under totality of circumstances, the idea that as long as the decision for use of force or of officer-created jeopardy happens before the victim has the opportunity to end the violence themselves, the officer is justified, because, like in this circumstance, the fact that he stepped in front as she backed up meant the person who made the final decision as to whether or not this was going to be a lethal circumstance was Renee when she hit the gas.
Well, out of interest, I was aware of the Supreme Court not actually making the decision, just saying this is how you have to consider it. Out of interest, morally, Connor, what do you think of that? Cop tells a guy to come out of the car. He's got his door open. He turns the ignition on, and then I guess within like less than a second afterwards, the cop jumps on the door sill, and then the car starts moving, and then he shoots the guy.
And then shoots a guy once the car starts moving.
Yeah,
I think it's officer caused jeopardy. Like the reason why I keep repeating this concept.
When you say officer caused jeopardy, do you mean that it was a justified shooting or not, though?
Okay, so I'm not evading. I'll try to answer as directly and briefly as possible. We both have responsibilities. Officers are supposed to enforce the law. Citizens are supposed to, you cannot escape the ride. You can escape the rap. Okay? So if an officer tells you that you need to be detained and go to jail, it's your duty as a citizen to surrender unless you actually think that they're like going to murder you. Right? So that person, by starting their car and driving, did not fulfill that responsibility. But that officer further endangered the situation, because he could have let him go, got his license plate, written down his description, put a warrant out for his arrest, and they could have gotten him at a later time that would be infinitely safer. And now a human being is dead. And so in my world, at least if I could write law about this right now, I would say that we should train the public on this. Cops shouldn't be criminally held liable for officer caused jeopardy unless it's particularly egregious, but it should open them to civil suit 100%. Like it should waive their sovereign immunity if officer caused jeopardy.
This officer, this ICE agent specifically, be open to civil suit by Renee Good's surviving family?
I don't know if it should be adjudicated in Renee Good's family, if Renee Good's family's favor, because I think that she has partial the responsibility, but I do think that the ICE should be open for civil suit, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and as far as like whether like the civil part,
right, Loner, did I answer your question?
I think so. I think,
but these are all going to be long.
In summary, it sounded like a justified shooting, then, right?
Well, it's justified because we have a very specific and limited threshold for justifying lethal force, which is imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. Well, that guy started his car and started driving, and the cop's on the car. He's putting the cop in imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. Deadly force is met. The cop can kill the guy in order to hopefully he takes his foot off the gas because he's dead, and then the cop doesn't get dragged 75 feet and get injured and or killed by the car. But the police officer, if he had done his procedures, his tactics and techniques properly, called in the license plate first, saw who the driver was, and then the driver starts the car and takes off, well, that cop could just take a step back and be like, okay, I got your license plate. I know what you look like. I'm going to write up a report and a warrant, and we'll catch you at another time that's not going to put my life or your life in as much danger. And I think cops and the public should both be trained on that expectation.
Yeah, that's the bit I think we'll probably never agree on. Like, I don't see how, because as far even for precedent or even just for setting an example, the idea that a cop can remember, and maybe if this was a situation where but even if it were like a murderer in the car, like a joyrider, the idea of like you see the guy turn the ignition on with his door open, and then you jump onto the door sill and just like you're standing on the edge of a car, knowing that it's probably about to move, and then you decide, well, now my life's in danger. You might as well just take his gun out and say, if you move, I'm going to shoot you, right? Like,
but the law enforcement officer, I agree with you there. But the law enforcement officer, this is one of the things that I'm getting pissed off with my chat about too. The law enforcement officer is doing their duly sworn job. They wake up, they put on soft armor, they put on a battle belt, they go out into the world, they look for law offenders, they arrest them. That is their job. The other person is a criminal who's trying to evade consequence. And so to weigh these people,
And what consequence is, yeah, the officer has a greater responsibility to protect people. The woman hasn't gone through any kind of fucking training, nor is she held to any particular standard. One person has more training, one person has less training. Simple as.
as equally responsible and acting in an equally responsible way, I think is a recipe for like civilizational dissolution.
As in, you think the cops should be held to a higher standard or lower because they're not criminal?
No, I think the cops should be held to a higher standard, but I think to say, so as an example, let's use the example that you just said. As a matter of fact, I think this is probably a problem in the United Kingdom. So let's say it is a murderer. Let's say it is a joyrider. And the cop is like, I don't want to let this guy go, but I want to try to arrest him. So I'm going to jump into the window because I think the stakes are this high and I want to protect members of the public. And then the guy doesn't stop after he screams a couple of times and he's like, if you don't stop, I'm going to kill you. And then the guy still doesn't stop. Well, at that point, if the cop shoots the guy, do you want the cop to go to jail for that? For stopping a homicide suspect who refused lawful orders, who fled and eluded law enforcement, and who also put the cop's life in jail?
Yeah,
you want to put the cop in jail for that kind of behavior.
If the person's a homicide subject, everything changes, right? Like, but I think this person was toll violations is what he was suspected of.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. I do want to move off the toll violation guy.
Yeah, can I zoom it out a little bit?
Can I get the $50? I got a $50.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. You're sure.
$50 from this is for Connor from Dat Reshi guy. Thank you for the $50. Okay, Connor. Couldn't you say that ICE, therefore, had the ability to let her go then, since he had already recorded her face, license plate, and the make model of her car? She was actively letting civvies go by her, so I don't see the danger she posed.
Not only could I say that, I said it earlier in the debate.
No, I disagree. I hard disagree. License plate only fucking matters if the state and local cops are actually going to cooperate with you and tell you where they've seen that license plate. ICE doesn't do traffic patrols. They're never going to see that license plate again unless the state and local cops cooperate, and the state and local cops aren't going to cooperate.
I wonder why they're not cooperating, considering how ICE has also been hassling police officers and how they feel some type of way about being entitled to a bunch of stupid shit. Like, oh, well, you have to follow us order. Yeah, I wonder why. It's because they don't want to cooperate. It's because ICE does not want to cooperate with the cops in the first place. Cops don't even know whether or not ICE is rolling into their town or not. They appear out of nowhere in unmarked vehicles, and then they expect the help of police without telling them that they're even there in the first place. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Dumbass.
Their evaluation, and it can't be.
Okay, at the risk of disagreeing with my debate partner. Okay.
How dare you?
Your debate partner is ass.
As far as I read today, ICE is allowed to enforce immigrations and customs enforcement, but they're also allowed to arrest U.S. citizens who are interfering with their lawful operations. So they have the right to detain her, arrest her in reference to what she was doing.
They're allowed to, but how are they going to find her?
Well, I was going to get to you. In reference to local infractions, let's say that they wanted to hit her with
Work
like a
with
local
the
traffic
cops. But they don't want to work with the cops. Shrimple us, motherfucker.
For obstructing the roadway. Or let's say they wanted to hit her with, some kind of noise ordinance or something. They would have to call a local police officer, at which point she would still be subject to detention. Okay. But my point is that arresting somebody who is interfering in ICE operations is not worth their life, and it's not worth the life of the ICE operator. And so therefore, stepping to the passenger side, giving lawful commands, reporting it to the local authorities, even if they're not going to do anything about it, that is the more moral choice.
Sure. Again, but that's more of a 2020 hindsight one where it's like, if you know she's going to get shot.
I would argue that he should have knowingly not stepped in front of the vehicle, 100%.
Sure.
Like it's a tactical thing. He shouldn't be punished for it.
That's
but
so.
he shouldn't
Yeah.
step in front of the vehicle.
When
Do
we
you
talk
think
about
that-
officer
this
created,
is to you both, actually, to
Sure.
Jeb Tan and to counter, because I'm just really curious. So I understand that you don't think there should be any legal penalties. Do you think he should lose his job?
no, I think he acted in accordance to his training. More
He
than
did
likely.
violate his training though by moving in front of the vehicle.
No,
Actually,
you
not
cited
really.
you cited DOJ policy and the
DHS.
DHS,
Yeah, the
right?
DHS
That's what I said
policy also again. It also doesn't exactly cover the situation he was in, and he didn't act in accordance with his training, as far as I'm concerned. If you leave a gray area and an officer operates within that gray area, you can't fire him for operating within an area that your training doesn't cover because your training's not good enough. This is the same reason with like the
They are told specifically, do not go in front of a car unless it is like turned off or something. I forget the
Well,
exact
right.
word.
Let me-
What DHS policy are you citing?
yeah. Let me see that.
Yeah,
DHS
let me
policy.
bring it up. Kamikaze might have it. Kamikaze, you're in chat
I wonder
still,
if you
just
can make
DM
an
it to me.
argument that another reason why the shots were not justified was because even if you made the shots and you killed her or you stopped her, right? That doesn't prevent the car from not moving forward. So that doesn't actually prevent the threat from being erased. You reacted and you shot, right? But that doesn't erase the car. Like going, you killed a woman, the car keeps on going. What did you change? What the fuck did you change? Exactly. Now there's nobody in control of the car. The car is free to move forward and hit children, or old lady, or you, right? Because nobody's in control of the car.
Because I could
Well, a lot of
definitely be
fucks people
convinced
with
that he should
cars.
lose his job, and I think he should probably personally resign anyway. So I do want to give this its time.
No, I
But
get it. You
did
don't want to
touch
concede on
the
anything.
Officer
Fine.
created jeopardy thing.
Yeah, I wanted to come back to
I don't
Connor
wanna-
as well because I think we might have been miscommunicating with the murder suspect thing. But like, given that it wasn't a murder suspect, it was a tolling violation or whatever. Like, even then, like, do you think there should be no punishment for the cop doing that? Because
No, I actually think that if we did the standard, because I think the standard actually existed in my department. If we did the standard, like, because we were told it's not worth your life, right? Like, don't die for a fucking parking ticket, right? We also had a standard. Sorry, just try to give me 2 minutes, okay? I'll try to be as brief as I can. There's perverse incentives and there's different standards.
How
for
the
different,
fuck was she supposed to run over a fucking Waffle House connoisseur at like fucking 1 mile per hour? How the fuck was somebody like that supposed... Hello?
municipalities, okay? So as a city cop, I was told that if there's somebody who flees and eludes off of a traffic stop and they have not committed a violent felony, you are not permitted to pursue because the added danger to the officer, to the other driver, and to members of the public is too great, and people have been killed in these scenarios. But what that's done in Orange County, Florida, is there are gangs who know that Orange County Sheriff's Office does not pursue, and as a result, every single traffic stop that these gang members get on, they flee. So you've now created a perverse incentive where a criminal organization knows the rules and is flouting the rules, creating a more dangerous, more lawless community. And what's interesting about that is that state police don't have that rule. So if a sheriff's deputy tries to pull you over in Orange County, they won't pursue. If you get pulled over by a same deputy in Lake County, they will pursue. If a state trooper gets a hair up their ass, they can pursue. And so that variability in like the social fabric keeps like bad guys on their toes.
All right, maybe I'll save this for later. Actually, this just sounds retarded. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'll save that for later. I probably won't turn this into a video. I don't know. I don't want to turn this into a video. Okay. All right, who do I read into? Guys, please. Please, please, please. subscribe to my second channel. Because I still need 1,000 subscribers on that channel. So then I can just stream forever and no longer have to worry about anything, okay? Can you guys imagine streams until like 3 a.m.? Like 3 more hours of stream time? Oh my god, that'd be so based. Holy shit. I wish, okay? But like, again, 30 more subscribers on my second channel. Alright? 30 more. Okay? Oh my god. So then I no longer have to worry about, like, cutting up the VODs. Fuck, I fucking hate doing that shit. Oh my god. Anyway. Are they sub like a pro? Awesome. I know. All right, I love you guys. Join my server. You guys are awesome. Keep it frosty. I'm ready into a RuneScape prison. I love you guys. Bye. Good night. Farewell. See ya. Okay.